but here it is. It's the Federal Register for, and you'll see right here, in case anyone is curious, proposed rule. Now, real quick, Jason, there is a stigma, especially in the veteran community on YouTube, where proposed means it's not going to happen or it might not happen. And that's not the case. Okay. The VA does not allocate the resources, manpower, the time to essentially update VA SRD to say, hey, we're not going to do it. Okay. That hasn't happened for VA SRD. It's going to happen. And in fact, these changes, like the criteria for tinnitus, for mental health, for sciatica, for TBI, the VA didn't make it up. They are essentially falling in line with the medical consensus. It would be a wild world if the VA was like the leading authority on DSM-5 criteria and, you know, actual medical things that need to happen. Obviously, that's way over my head, but it would be a wild world if the Department of Veteran Affairs was the lead for that. And so real quick, I'm going to scroll all the way down, Jason. There's a absolute ton of information here. We're going to hone in on two aspects, and I'm going to show you all the changes. Here we go. Okay. So here is every single change happening with nerves. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 changes happening with nerves. You'll see the proposed title for nerve damage. And then, so if you have any of these, you absolutely need to just stay on top of it. Now, what we're going to do is specifically hone in on sciatic nerve damage because tons of veterans have radiculopathy. And then we're going to hone in on TBI because tons of veterans have tinnitus. And that's going to be a huge player come probably next year. Okay. So looking at sciatica, and if you're wondering what I'm doing right now, all right, you can't see it on my screen, but I'm just hitting Control F and I'm typing in sciatic. And then there we go. Now you can see the proposed changes. This explains it in paragraph format. Do not worry. There's an easier version. And here it is. So here are the proposed changes for sciatic nerve damage. And it looks at grade. So we have grade 0 or 1 for 80%, grade 2 for 60, 2+ for 40, grade 3 for 20, and grade 4 for 10. Now, real quick, to me, Jason, this doesn't mean anything. Okay.
Right.
I don't know what any of this means.
That's funny.
But when we go look at the current, so this is new proposed. This right here is how sciatic nerve damage is currently rated. And you can see it's the same criteria or same rating, 80, 60, 40, 20, 10. Then you have mild, moderate, moderately severe, and severe. And then, of course, we have the complete. All right. And so the reason I wanted to bring both of these up, Jason, is because one, the ratings values themselves don't change. The biggest change for sciatica specifically is going to be the evaluation process to rate sciatica, right? So real quick, there's 3 things happening, and we're only going to focus on number 2 here because that's the change. So you still have your criteria for service connection. That does not change at all. It's the big 3: in-service event, current diagnosis, and the nexus. For sciatica, overwhelming is secondary, right? So now the big 3 shifts to a secondary service connection, which is, hey, you need to have a lower spine injury, or really an injury causing sciatic nerve damage, which is probably your lower spine. You still need a current diagnosis of sciatic nerve damage. There's many. Radiculopathy is a type of sciatica. And then the nexus, which in the case of nerve damage is super easy to make because obviously if your spine is pinching your sciatic nerve, bada bing, bada boom, that's why it's easy to service connect. So that does not change. Okay. It's not going to be harder to be rated for sciatic nerve damage. What does change is the evaluation process. I am rated, Jason, for both of my legs in radiculopathy. And I can tell you right now that CMP exam for my nerves probably took about a minute and a half. And that's not a joke.
Right.
I sat on the doctor's table. You know, they got the weird plastic and it's just uncomfortable, whatever. So I'm sitting there. They bring out this rubber triangle hammer mallet looking thing, and they hit my knee pretty hard too, and nothing happened. Right. So they're supposed to go bang, and then your knee goes whoop. Right. You kick. You have that reflex. My knees don't do that, especially if I'm sitting down like I am right now. Okay. And that's it. That was the test. And then all of a sudden I ended up getting 20% for each leg. And it was, that whole evaluation process was like, yep, 20%, right? Hit the knee, bam, 20%. Which is super inconsistent because some of my friends have way more severe nerve damage than I do in my legs. And they're rated at 10%. And so what we see with the evaluation process is, one, it's going to be more consistent across the board, across the C&P exam evaluation process. And two, it's going to be more accurate, right? And so I cannot tell you if my nerve damage is moderate or moderately severe or mild. I can tell you that the VA says my nerve damage is moderate. Okay. But looking at the proposed criteria, my nerve damage is supposed to fall into grade 3. Now, I did do some digging on what these grades mean. And again, it's still over my head. Believe it or not, Jason and I are not physicians. I'm just some dude in my basement. Jason's some dude in his shed with roosters. Okay. We're just normal dudes here. Okay. We're Marine Corps veterans, not physicians. But looking up at the grades, it looks at gravity and how to test for nerve damage. That's basically what I understand about it. I know that was a mouthful, Jason, but we have the criteria for connection, which doesn't change. We have the evaluation process, which does change. And I would make the argument, from what I understand about grades and what I understand about mild, moderate, and moderately severe, or hitting you with a hammer and calling it a day, I do think we're going to see lower ratings for radiculopathy, many more 10% for radiculopathy, because there is an actual process. I'm sorry. Right. There will be an actual process to evaluate your nerves based on grades 0 through 4 versus just saying, rink-a-dink. Yeah, right. 20%. Right. And so do I think it's a bad change? Not really. It's one of those changes, bad is good and good is bad in the world of VA disability. Here's my question to myself. Do I want the VA rating schedule and evaluation process to be accurate and consistent? The answer is yes. I think with radiculopathy, that means we're going to see a lot more 10%, which is going to take away from not just the 10%, but also a bilateral factor, right? Because bilateral at 20 each is much higher than a bilateral at 10 each. That was a mouthful. Give me your thoughts on that. Those are the changes for sciatic nerve damage.
One thing that I do want to point out is, as you were scrolling through that, for those that are not familiar with the VA rating schedule and how it works, that's it. What Clay was just looking at was the rating schedule. Now, that is probably the worst example to give of a rating schedule. Yeah. But you can see that there's some criteria, and if you meet that criteria, it will warrant this specific rating. This is why it's so important that you understand what the rating schedule is. And look, if it's too much doctor speak, have the conversation with your doctor, because there's two things you're trying to do here. You're trying to get service connected, and you're trying to get the appropriate rating. If your doctor will do a Nexus letter and do a DBQ for you, awesome. You might have to bring them up to speed with everything, and that's great. But look, if you don't have the time, or your doctor's not willing, or it's a VA doctor, use our friends over at AME, American Medical Experts. They're solid. They can do a Nexus letter for you. This is not a claim consulting company. They're doctors that provide you the tools you need for your claim. You need a Nexus letter that's solid and in VA speak to get you service connected. They got you. If you need a DBQ, disability questionnaire, to help you formalize all your information, put it in VA speak so it's easy for a VA rater to look at that and look at the rating schedule and go, wow, you should be rated 60%. Then they can do that for you, right? So just want to throw it out there. You can get a free consultation. We'll drop the link somewhere for you to get the free consultation. Information's free, right? Don't just say, no, I'm not going to. Have a conversation. See if it makes sense. If it does, great. And if it doesn't, that's fine too. Either way. So that is the rating schedule. That's what they look like. Some will have more information in them. That's really important to understand. And as far as this is concerned, I agree with you, Clay. We're probably, as a byproduct of trying to make it more consistent, to have a more consistent outcome for rating these types of conditions, we're probably going to see an average lower rating, because you're going to err on the side of caution, I would think. And so as they do that, and you know, I got that too, and I'm 10% each leg. When I drive, I mean, when I get out of the car, I go from like looking like well, I don't know how old I look. Going from looking normal to I am like falling out of my car. When I go to get out, I'm like, you know, I'm almost touching the ground. And lately I've been putting my hand down. I got a truck and I got a little side step that you step into it that I use every time. I've actually put my hand on this, lean down, put my hand on the side step, then kind of flung out and, you know, do the kind of hobble over thing for a little bit. It depends though. If I drive for like 15 or 20 minutes, I'm doing that. If I drive for 5 minutes down the road, I don't have to do that. I can get out and look cool. Otherwise I look like it's pretty bad. Pretty soon I'll get my son to jump out and get on the other side, and, you know, I have to have him help me out. God. Anyway, so I think that we're, as a byproduct of consistency, we're going to see the lower rating. I think that right or wrong, you know, I mean, like you said, Clay, we're not doctors. I can't say that everybody should be 20s, right?
Yeah.
But whether it's right or wrong, the reality is that they're trying to streamline it and make it more, we'll call it equitable, just to throw that word out there because it makes Clay smile. So that way it's this consistent thing instead of, like you said, my buddy's got this and I got that. It's weird. I think that if you have any sort of nerve issues that affect your appendages, like neuropathy, that type of stuff, I would say absolutely file your intent to file, get your claim going, and do that now. I think that this is a missed opportunity, Clay, for a lot of people, this specific ailment, because I think that folks just go, I have a bad back. My back sucks. My back is causing me all these issues. It's my back. I don't sleep well. You know, it gets all stiff. It's into my hips and my legs, and, you know, my back. They file for their back. They get rated for their back at whatever, 20%, right? 10%, 20% for their back. And they're like, wow, that sucks because my back really does suck. And you're giving me such a low rating. Screw you, VA. I hate you. And you move on with your life. When really you should be filing for arthritis in your back and the radiculopathy or neuropathy or whatever else you have. And then all of those things together will wind up being a decent rating. So I think that you need to file for it. I think you might have a little more chance of getting a higher rating today than you would the eventual tomorrow when this goes into effect. So why not take care of that now and get it done? And I would even throw out, Clay, that for folks that are not really sure, right? But you have back issues and you're like, you know, I kind of feel like I have some issues like in my hips and maybe down my legs. And yeah, sometimes it goes numb, but you know, that's not a nerve thing. That's just my legs falling asleep because I'm sitting down, right? So for those folks, look, put in an intent to file and go to your doctor and have the conversation and let them tell you if you do or if you don't, right? It's not you, right? You don't try to self-diagnose. We always end up being easier on ourselves than a doctor would be. A doctor is actually going to let you know if you really do have that ailment. And if you do, then file for it. Back to you, Clay.